Be feminine, be a mother, be a wife, be childless, go on an adventure, be a witch. Be both at the same time. It's possible. Merry meet my fellow bookish witches. Welcome to week 2 of Battle of the BookTubers. If you missed my week 1 Battle of the BookTubers reading vlog, let me just give you a quick rundown of what this is all about. I and 3 other booktubers are competing in the 3rd round of a competition hosted by the lovely Danny over at Danny Dabbles called Battle of the BookTubers. We are tasked with recommending 2 books to our fellow booktubers, and the person who recommends the best wins and gets to go on to the championship round. You should also definitely check out my fellow competitors' videos to see how things are faring for them. I'll link each of their channels below. Give them a like and subscribe while you're there. This week, I will be focusing on the recommendations from BookTuber H. She has recommended The Honey Witch by Sydney J. Sheilds and Alice in Borderland by Haro. Neither of these were on my TBR. The Honey Witch I have never even heard of, but I am intrigued. Whereas Alice in Borderland I have a vague recollection of hearing about. I think that was mainly to do with its adaptations. The first one of BookTuber H's recommendations that I will read is The Honey Witch. There is no real reason for this except that this had the longest hold at my library. I put it in a while ago in the hopes it would come available around the time of needing to film these, and a few days ago it did. I have read the synopsis, and it is very much giving practical magic vibes, but sapphic. I am sensing that it is a contemporary setting. It's about an outcast girl who gets to inherit the witch magic of her family. The only caveat is she won't get to experience true love. It's like a family curse. Things seem to change when another woman enters the picture. She's a grumpy skeptic who doesn't believe in magic. Now, the witch is faced with an interesting and maybe fun challenge. What am I hoping for? I am hoping for some cute, cozy witch vibes combined with a sapphic, grumpy sunshine romance. This is at least what I am getting out of the synopsis. Only one way to know for sure. I am about 30% into The Honey Witch. Normally I would wait till I was a little further along. This book is set up really well in terms of it being broken up into parts. I just finished part 1. So I thought it was a good time to just stop and reflect on what's been going on, mainly because I am not enjoying this book as much as I thought I would. I actually really thought I was going to enjoy it. First off, I thought it was going to be a contemporary setting, and it is not. It's very much giving Bridgerton. We start with Marigold, who is our woman main character. She is part of this society. She's attending balls. She's meant to get married. She is 21, so of course she is on the cusp of spinsterhood. And she's weird. Because she is a witch. Deep down, she feels like that is what she is, but she hasn't been willing to put a label on herself yet. Fair. The reason why I'm not enjoying it so far is because it is very surface level. There is nothing in depth about the character, about the setting, about the magic system that we have been introduced to. Marigold goes out on full moons and interacts with nature, but it is very shallow of an explanation that we get as far as what it means, why she does it, why she feels drawn to it. We also get some brief, vague backstory about how she used to visit her grandmother on this island. It was the only place that she felt like she could be herself. Something happened, but she can't remember exactly what, which is odd considering that it was meant to be when she was 10 or 11. I believe it was 11. I don't know, like at 11 you should remember something, especially if it's like something traumatic, which the way it's described, it was meant to be. Then we have this whole opening sequence of her going to balls, meeting this guy, this male character who's also kind of an oddball himself, and it's kind of sweet where they get together at the ball and it's, oh, we both don't know how to dance. We're kind of the social outcasts. Let's dance together. And they have a great time. And it's very sweet. It seemed odd to me that they would set up this entire moment with this character for absolutely no reason. We also get this weird introduction to her ex. This part really irked me. I get maybe it's meant to showcase the setting and the time period that we are in. This is a guy who she dated back, she said, when she was 17. He is a decade older than her. I wanted to hurt this man because that means that she was 17 and he was 27. The way some of this is worded, there was like a line where it said the last ball they went to together, he left her on her knees. I don't think that is meant to be taken the way I took it because my brain is warped. The way it's worded, I can't imagine I'm the only one who went that direction. I'm pretty sure that's not what the author meant. I didn't like that the character continuously brought up how much she missed her ex, even though it was made very clear he treated her poorly. And then we have her grandmother stepping in and being, look, I'm dying and I am the honey witch and you need to come and take over the honey witch position. And to do that, that means you have to accept this curse to never have a true love. The rules of this curse, they're not made explicitly clear. It's very confusing. It is implied that grandma does have a love interest. The curse just prevented them from being together, but quite honestly, this is not written well. It seems almost as if grandma just couldn't get out of her own way. If she had just been, I'm not going to believe in this curse and I'm going to love this man who clearly has affection for me, curse be damned, I'm sure it would have worked out. That's just me. The whole premise is that she's meant to take over this island where her grandma has this magical power as the honey witch. The opposite of the honey witch is the ash witch. They used to be friends. For 50 years now, the ash witch has been determined to take the honey witch's power and use it for herself for immortality, which is like the most boring reason to take power, in my opinion. The grandma explains that it was the ash witch who cursed her. The grandma says that she has lived far past what a normal human would live. It's said that she's like 100. So you're telling me the ash witch 50 years ago, okay, 50 years ago, made this curse of true love. That means for 50 years prior, grandma could have had a true love. Make it make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. Marigold asking the important question, well, if you couldn't have true love, how did you have my mom? I wish it had just been an explanation of you don't need to be in love to make children, but of course we can't say that in a young adult novel. Grandma's like, well, I used magic to have like an immaculate conception and that's how your mother was born, which is never addressed again, or at least it hasn't been addressed again thus far. Grandma literally goes, well, when it's time for you to continue the line and if you want to have a child, you'll learn. You can show how to make your own child with magic. Weird. Marigold is brought to the island and the whole point is that she's meant to help her grandma reestablish the wards that are protecting the island and then also help the people who live on the island. They come to her for remedies and things like that, like things you would do if you had a town witch. The first part of the book is also her supposedly learning the magic and learning the remedies and learning how to interact with people. It's not done well. I would have preferred even a training montage. There are moments where there are customers who are asking for magic, but then the grandma's like, oh no, I don't want you to see that. Woman, we don't have time. You are dying and you want her to take over and you are preventing her from learning key things because it makes you uncomfy. Pointless. We've already been introduced to her love interest. Had I not read the description of the book, I would not have known that it was her love interest because she meets her, oh, this is Lottie. And that's it. And it's, oh, she had a scowl on her face. And she has red hair. That's important. Randomly, there's a throwaway line where she's talking about something red. And she's like, why is it whenever I think of something red, I think of Lottie? Where is this coming from? We haven't mentioned Lottie in chapters. Why all of a sudden are we acting like she has these feelings for Lottie or that she thinks of her? I'm not feeling the vibes that I wanted to with this. I was really hoping for some sapphic practical magic vibes and I'm not getting it. I'm gonna read part 2. If it doesn't improve, something doesn't start happening and we don't start getting like more fleshed out character development, I'm gonna have to DNF it. I hate to say it, I don't like DNFing books. This one might be the one I DNF. We'll have to see. I have finished The Honey Witch. It's going to be a little hard for me to break down everything about this book because the story was such a non-story. The plot didn't really provide much of anything. The things I was most looking forward to in this book were definitely the vibes it promised, which for me felt like it was going to be cottagecore, practical magic, but sapphic, maybe a little good versus evil. I wanted coziness, cozy vibe. That's what I was expecting. From the onset, when we enter this story, I was disappointed that it wasn't more contemporary. It was set in the 1800s, and it definitely had a Bridgerton feel. I've not read any of the Bridgerton books, but I don't think it was mainly a Bridgerton feel as far as the books, more so the show. And here's why. Because the show did something different where it made these racially blended characters and everyone interacts together, and that's not really an issue in the show. This book was trying to do the same thing, but for LGBTQIA characters. The reason why this doesn't work is because you are setting it up in this time period where women are still expected to get married, still expected to have children. By the time you're in your late 20s, you're considered a spinster. That doesn't work for a community that is just a-okay with LGBTQIA characters. How does that work? I'm so baffled by why the author thought that would work in the setting she was setting it up in. It would have worked better if the book had been more contemporary, I feel. That is my personal opinion. Let's get into the characters. We have Marigold and Lottie. Marigold being the main character and Lottie being her love interest. The problem I have with Marigold is that she is written very immature. She's supposed to be 21, turning 22 throughout the novel. There was actually a moment where I had to look, just double check and make sure that she wasn't a teenager. Her attitude, her mannerisms, her choices are very naive, just teen angst, and not in a good way. You can't have an adult character act like a teenager, and I'm not even saying acting like a 17, 18-year-old, because that I can kind of maybe see. She was acting like she was 14, 15, 16. Very young, very naive, very stupid, for lack of a better word. She's also written as pretty much a Mary Sue, which, if done well or in a certain context, isn't necessarily bad. But in this situation, it is, especially because of the magic system. The other thing with Marigold is that she has this bitter grudge, or this like bitter hatred for women who, I guess, in her eyes, conform to society, in that they get married and they have kids. And because she's never been one to experience that, she thinks that makes her above everybody because she doesn't want that now. Even though the book isn't very clear on how she feels about that. There are moments where you're like, she doesn't want it, but then there are moments that she acts like she does, she just doesn't have it. Mentioning a previous relationship that she had, the way she speaks about him. When people ask her about it in the story, she tells other characters, oh, I was with him because he was the first person who I thought actually saw me for who I was. She talks about how much she misses him and how much she loved him, even though this guy treated her horribly. The book contradicts itself, not just with Marigold, but in a lot of other ways. This bitterness that she has for these women plays throughout the book. Be feminine, be a mother, be a wife. That is your choice. I'm totally fine with that. On the other hand, be childless, go on an adventure, be a witch. Be both at the same time. It's possible. I don't like this narrative of I'm going to hate on women who are not like me and I'm the best woman because I know what I'm doing. I've grown beyond what society deems as appropriate, even though in this society, everyone seems to be okay with LGBTQIA characters. It doesn't make logical sense for everything that is set up in this world. Then we have Lottie. My problem with Lottie is right from the jump, she comes in very hot in terms of just being this rude character. She was an asshole. Her connection with Marigold is that she is best friends with Marigold's childhood friend, August. At some point you wonder, why is August hanging out with this person? This person is super toxic. You do get a little bit of a backstory as to why she is best friends with August. His family took her in, which is very nice because they're technically family because they grew up together, that he just kind of puts up with her, which is a whole other problem in and of itself. She makes it very clear that she does not like Marigold, that she does not believe in magic, and she's very cruel about it. This isn't, oh, I'm expressing my opinion. Hey, you can have your opinion. Here's mine. I don't believe in magic. That's fine. She's entitled to that opinion. My issue comes with it when she becomes super aggressive with Marigold about her magic, essentially just is cruel for no reason, just straight up mean. I know that she was meant to be the love interest, and so at that point I'm like, how am I supposed to root for them to be together? Because she's treating Marigold this way, Marigold in turn is like, well, you're a horrible person. Why would I want to be with you? And that's fair. That's valid. Like, why would you want to be with someone like that? These moments where Marigold is accurately saying Lottie is a horrible person and I don't want to be around her. But then on the flip side, she's like, well, I'm so lonely and Lottie's hot. I want her to be around. It doesn't come off as she is in love with Lottie. It's very much coming off as she is lonely. She is desperate for someone to just be in her life. And Lottie, I guess, is the logical only choice. There are other side characters, but they really don't serve any functional purpose. I guess the other main character would be the Ash Witch, who serves as the villain in the story. I am not joking when I say this. The Ash Witch doesn't come into play until 90% into the book, which is shocking because honestly, the good versus evil plot point was one of the things that kind of kept me reading and wanting to continue the story. I was hoping it would get better. I had told myself that at 60%, if it didn't, I was going to DNF it. At the 60% mark is when the love story kind of starts kicking off. I was giving it the benefit of the doubt. I very much wish that I had DNF'd it. The only reason I finished it was because the sunk cost fallacy is a real thing with me, and I felt the need that at that point I should just finish it. The love story begins to happen between Lottie and Marigold, and it's not like a build-up. It's not earned. It's literally just a 180 shift in these characters. You have set up these characters to be a certain way, and then you just change who they are fundamentally to make them be in love. It's not real. That doesn't make any sense. We have the magic system, which is flimsy at best. We are introduced to Marigold's grandmother, who dies pretty early on in the story after going through this really expository, pointless training montage, for lack of a better description of what it was, kind of explaining the magic system. It is not well done. And then everything that happens after that point with the magic seems to be, I'm gonna toss my hand and hopefully the magic works. There is no explanation for how the magic works. There is some in terms of the honey, I guess, like different kinds of honey provide different kinds of cures or power. There's really no further explanation, and so you have to trust the character in what she is doing and what honey she is using. Trust that she knows how to use it. But I don't trust Marigold. That's the problem. If the character was set up better, maybe I would be okay with the magic system being as flimsy as it is. Different things happen to people, and she's just like, sage honey, sage honey, sage honey, sage honey. Well, clearly the sage honey is just an all-purpose honey because that's the one you keep going for. To be fair, sage is great. She makes a big deal that there's honey blossom honey and lavender honey. So there's a bunch of these different honeys, but for some reason, every time something happens, it's the sage honey she goes for. Don't ever run out of the sage honey, apparently. There's also the curse that has befallen her family. This curse is so stupid. The whole premise of this is that the Ash Witch cursed the Honey Witch to prevent the line from continuing, because then once the line ends, she can take over Innisfree, which is the island that has all the honey and the power. Here's the problem with that. Grandma managed to magic a child for herself. It's made very clear that it's basically the same thing, the same DNA. She was able to inherit the magical powers because that is her child. What's the point of the curse then if they can just magic a child? The curse is pointless. Aside from the fact that I guess the Honey Witch will be lonely because the curse is they could never find true love. What does true love have to do with making a child? This curse was not well thought out, was not well fleshed out. It's only been around for 50 years. Grandma dies at 100, so that means she was only cursed and she was 50 years old. You set up this world where people need to be getting married in their late teens, early 20s, otherwise, you know, spinster. Within the text, it says that she had a true love, a soulmate, that they were planning on getting married. Okay, when? Because she was 50 when the curse happened, and you're telling me that Marigold's mother isn't the product of that relationship? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. Her soulmate did propose to her. They were planning on getting married. Okay, when? It was pretty easy to figure out that Lottie was the descendant of the Ash Witch. The book did not do this subtly. I pretty much called it very early on when we meet Lottie. I was hoping that it would be a lot more impactful. It is not. Nothing occurs with that information until the Ash Witch appears, which, reminder, wasn't until 90% into this book. So then let's talk about the plot briefly, because there's really not much of it. The plot basically is meant to be that Marigold learns her magic. She meets Lottie and they have their love story, but it's difficult because they're meant to be soulmates, or at least they can't experience true love because of the curse. Apparently, if they do get close, Lottie gets sick. It keeps getting worse and worse and worse to the point where she's having seizures, and then eventually she does end up dying at some point, and Marigold has to bring her back to life. The one spicy scene in this book, which felt completely out of place, especially since leading up to that scene, Marigold knows that her doing anything physical with Lottie is causing her pain and causing her suffering. She makes it very clear, like, I am not going to do this anymore. I'm going to separate myself from Lottie. We aren't doing this. The very next page, they are getting spicy with each other. Lottie is dying. It's that whole contradictory thing. It's everywhere in this book. This book is just a book of contradictions. Then we have the Ash Witch, who is trying to take over the island. That is the main through line of the plot, right? That's what we got. This book manages to weave so much nonsense and side plots that mean absolutely nothing to that main story. We get a weird side quest with August in him finding his soulmate, a weird side quest in her having to go back to her family home for her sister's wedding that doesn't make any sense and wasn't needed. There is a weird side story about Lottie having tattoos, how tattoos are considered a crime in this world, and we don't know that they're a crime until right before someone reveals them. This author doesn't know how to do setup and payoff well. Tattoos are a crime. Oh, and Lottie has a lot of tattoos, and she is about to have to get undressed for the modiste for a dress, and that's going to be a problem. That scene was just completely unnecessary. This book had so much fluff. The first 30%, you could cut that entire thing out. Was completely unnecessary. I would say in terms of importance into the plot, only 25% of the book is important plot points. Lottie dies, Marigold brings her back. Coming to the end, we have the Ash Witch. At the very, very end, there's no real build up to this arrival of the Ash Witch. It all happens within the last 10% of the book. This big battle that ends before it even begins because Marigold apparently is shitty at magic, which is so wild to me because you've had the first 90% of the book talking about how amazing she is and that she's the best honey witch. Her grandmother tells her constantly, oh, you're the best honey witch. Clearly that's not true. The Ash Witch came and immediately kicked her ass. How kerfuffled this book was, how desperately it needed editing. It was not a fun time for me. It was a hard read to get through. This book had a really cool premise that on paper I definitely should have loved. So I do not begrudge BookTuber H for recommending this. All signs pointed to I should have enjoyed this. I wanted cozy, I wanted witch, I wanted sapphic. Arguably this book should have given me all of that. And I guess if you wanted to get down to the nitty gritty, it kind of did, but not in the way I expected or hoped for. I do not understand the hype that was surrounding this book. I didn't know about it prior to being it recommended to me when I was trying to get it from my library. There was an 8-week hold for this book. So many people wanted to read it. If you were to look online, there were so many people talking about that it was one of their most anticipated books of the year. I also found out that this is a debut novel and it very much feels like a debut novel. The next book that BookTuber H recommended for me is Alice in Borderland, which is a manga. I'm excited to actually read this. I'm not a huge manga reader. I do have a few manga. I have Fruits Fruits Basket on my shelf. That is the, I think, one manga I own, and I don't even own all of them because manga takes up so much bookshelf space. If you know, you know. I am a fan of anime, and I do know that Alice in Borderland does have an anime adaptation that my best friend did tell me I would probably like. So I am aware of this story. I am definitely excited to read it. I really don't know much about Alice in Borderland. In reading the description, it feels very similar to Sword Art Online, which is a favorite anime of mine. That is part of what has me excited to read this. I don't really know anything else about it. I'm interested to find out why BookTuber H suggested a manga, because I don't believe I've mentioned manga or anime on my channel. I don't think I have. It's kind of a wild card that I got this. It'll be really interesting to find out why it was selected, but I am definitely excited to read it. See you in the update. I finished Alice in Borderland. It was a much faster read than I was anticipating. I guess I just kind of forgot how quickly you can read a manga. I think the hard part about only reading the first of a manga series, the first volume never really gives you everything versus what a full-length novel can give you, which is full plot, overarching journey of the characters plus character development. The first volume of a manga really sets up the world, sets up, I guess, the major conflict, and then also sets up the characters. For Alice in Borderland, I like the setting. I think it's interesting. I'm not 100% sure yet if it's dystopian or if it's multiverse. I feel like that is something that will come down the line if I were to continue the manga. I like the conflict in the story, the fact that the characters are essentially sucked into this game. I liked the concept of them being put into a game, and this is where the comparison I thought for Sword Art Online was, but it's vastly different in terms of the setup. I guess they're watching a fireworks show, and one of the fireworks is really close. I'm assuming it's not a normal firework. It explodes, and then they wake up in this alternate location. The city is the same, but it's deserted. Things are covered in dirt and earth and vegetation. People haven't been there for a while, which is the dystopian feel I was getting. They are tasked with completing different games, and the games have different requirements, different levels of difficulty. They get a playing card, spades, clubs, hearts, diamonds, things like that. Plus the number on the card is the level of difficulty. The first game, I think it was really brilliant the way it was set up. It was very simple. It was pulling fortunes. I don't think the story did a good job setting up the characters as people that you want to root for. We have the main character who seems to be meandering at life. He has a younger brother who overshadows him, the golden child. He feels very useless. He just doesn't really have direction. He has a best friend who very much is the stereotypical class clown. He's also a little pervy. It's very clear that this is catered to the male gaze. Nothing wrong with that. I'm now aware. Then they have a third friend who I guess was a middle school dropout, opened his own business, and he basically runs a bar now. That's where they go to hang out. The bartender friend isn't high up in society. He at least owns a business and he knows who he is. And that's how we're introduced to the characters. Back into the game, we have them pulling fortunes. The only one who seems to be taking it seriously is the bartender friend. While in the midst of being pulled into this game, we are introduced to a woman character who has to play along with the game, and she's kind of there as exposition dump to explain the game. Pulling these fortunes, some of them have to answer certain questions, and they are math questions. If they are to get it wrong, they are going to be attacked by so many flaming arrows, the difference of the number being incorrect. Each time it happens, the arrows come from different locations. Bartender friend basically says to the main character, sorry, I really don't remember any of these characters' names, mentions that like, oh, the main character has talent and he can do stuff like this. And then he goes on and is able to determine based on the direction of where the arrows are coming, it doesn't matter that he gets the last question wrong, which is a good thing because it's like in the billions that he is wrong. So they're going to be facing like, I think 1,000,000 flaming arrows is what it was. It didn't matter because he knew the direction they were coming from, so they were able to survive relatively unscathed, save for the pervy friend who ends up getting hit by an arrow, but he doesn't die. The reason I took issue with this is that I liked that setup. I liked that, like, okay, so this guy is analytical, he sees things that other characters don't, and that's what they showed with him figuring out the location of the arrows. What I wish they had done was set up that he had this skill prior to him getting dropped into the game. The only thing we see in the story for this character is that he is whiny, he is lazy, and he has no drive. So it makes it hard for me to just immediately click and be like, oh no, but he's actually smart though. You need to give me some kind of setup for that, and I feel the story failed in doing that. Now granted, a lot of stuff happens in this first volume in terms of the game, so maybe that's why that got cut. Immediately we go into the second game, and this time around the pervy friend sits out because he can't handle playing another game. He can sit it out because the first game gave them a visa. It was a level 3, so they basically get 3 days. So 3 days where they do not have to play a game. The bartender friend and the main character decide, no, we're gonna go play another game. They learn that if your days run out and you don't play a game, you are unalived. They decide to go and add to their days by, participating in another game. This game, the second game, is a lot more intense. I definitely got way more into it than the first game. I think it was a solid way to set up how the game works, so I don't begrudge the story doing it that way. And then introducing the second game, which is essentially a game of tag. And it's a bigger group of people, so we learn that there are more people stuck in this universe. There are veterans who have been playing the games for a while. There are new people, like the characters we are following. This game of tag is taking place in an apartment complex. They are told that there is a serial killer that is on the loose. That is who is it, and if he catches you, he will unalive you. How they win the game is that you are in an apartment building, all the doors are locked except for one apartment that is unlocked, and in that apartment is what they call the base, and it's essentially a button, and you have to hit the button and that stops the game. So that is the goal, is to make it to search this apartment building, find the one unlocked door, and hit the button in the base, and that stops the game before the serial killer slash person who is it tags you, unalives you. This entire sequence I thought was very fun. It was interesting to see the different ways people handle a situation. It also gave us a chance to see how that character uses logic and how he reasons certain decisions when he's not panicking. I liked that it showed where a lot of the characters, their first instinct is to run when they are encountering the person who is it. Multiple times, I think twice, it turns out that it's a better situation to hide versus run, and he survives because of that. There is also more athletic people. They learn that the way the building is set up, you don't want to get trapped in an elevator. If this person who is it is right behind you, coming after you, to run down the stairs and then try to run down a long hallway, you're not going to make it before that person makes it down the stairs and comes to the hallway because he has a gun and is going to shoot. There's no really way to escape it. In that situation, it is better to figure out a way to hide. And then there's like another character who's like a rock climber, and she, instead of just taking the stairs and the hallways, just straight up jumps balconies, which is wild. They're able to figure out that the whole point of having the person who is it is that they are meant to guard the base. They figure out like where he's lurking and where he's sticking around. They realize, okay, the base has to be in one of these buildings. Main character and the friend who runs the bar friend, get together with the remaining people. They decide to work together to let them know, like, hey, he's in this location, screaming in the apartment complex. This whole sequence was very well done. Because they work together, the main character is able to find the base. The problem is when he gets into the base, it's not just one button to stop the game, it's 2 buttons, and there is a sign that says it has to be hit simultaneously. There's like 30 seconds left. It's very stressful. He panics and is screaming for someone to come and join him because he needs somebody, but the problem is everybody's running from the person who's it, and the person who's it is on his way to the base. They had set up the girl who was the rock climber. You see her pull herself up from the balcony in the apartment, and she's there, and so they're able to stop the game. I thought that was so well done. Right before it ends, there are some reveals in that there's one character who is going around and collecting the playing cards or the visas that other characters have that have been unalived. He is taking these cards off of the bodies and essentially adding them to his pile, the assumption being that he knows something that the others don't in terms of trying to escape. We also learn that the person who is it wasn't just a mindless thing that was part of the arena. He was another player. He was just playing a different game. I found that all very interesting. It makes me curious to potentially continue the manga. Manga takes so much time to get through. I didn't even look up how many volumes are a part of this series, but I'm assuming it's a lot. If I were to continue this, I would probably continue getting it through the library. I'm also maybe interested in watching the adaptation. I believe there is a live action Netflix adaptation. I believe there's also an anime. I did enjoy this. I do think this was definitely a shot in the dark as far as a recommendation goes. Kudos to BookTuber H for like taking that risk. I don't think I gave any indication that this is something I am a fan of. It was a very quick read. It was a fun read, and I'm tempted to continue for sure. Thanks for this. This was fun. A nice palate cleanser in a way, even though it was very action-packed and stressful. It was, I don't know, it was just a nice breather. Thank you. All right. Well, I made it to the end of week 2. I will admit this has been a bit of a rough week for me in terms of the books, which is why I was very grateful to Alice in Borderland. This competition has been a sprint marathon for me in terms of how I consume books. Definitely working out my bookworm muscles that have been dormant for a while. On to my final thoughts about these book recommendations. First, we have The Honey Witch by Sydney J. Sheilds. I don't think I have the mental capacity to rehash just how much my reading experience with this book was not enjoyable, not fun, not for me. With that, I will just say The Honey Witch will be getting 0.5 stars from me. I'm sorry, I wish I could give it more. I just can't. There were so many things that I wish could have been done differently with the story, particularly with the characters, with the way the entire plot was executed. It just failed me on all fronts. That is why it is getting that rating. I am so sorry, BookTuber H. I know you had the best of intentions with this. I know that on paper, this should have been a slam dunk. That is not on you. In contrast, I do think Alice in Borderland was a much better choice, even though it was, in my opinion, a out of left field choice. I'm just going to acknowledge that reading the first volume of a manga isn't as simple as reading a full-length novel. It doesn't give the complete story. That makes it a little bit more difficult because we are not seeing the full picture of the story, we aren't seeing the full end of the conflict, and we aren't getting the full character development for any of the characters. Based on what I know of the story, what it showed in terms of setting up everything for the world, the conflict, and the characters, that is what I am basing this rating on. I did like the setting. I liked the overall setup for the story as far as the games go. I do wish that the main character had been set up ever so slightly better than he was. I'm going to give Alice in Borderland 4.25 stars. I'm not sure if I'm going to continue the manga, but I think I am going to give the Netflix adaptation a shot. Now, to guess who BookTuber H is, I think it's Beatrice. I'm doing this purely out of a process of elimination based on who I think the previous booktuber was, who I think the next booktuber is. So it's really a process of elimination at this point. I think it's Beatrice. We'll have to see. As with the first vlog, I would love to hear from you if you have read either of these books. I know in looking up The Honey Witch, there were a lot of people that was an anticipated read for 2024. I'm just curious if there is anyone I know who actually read the book and enjoyed it and why. I would love to get a contrast from my perspective of reading this book. I think that would be interesting. If anyone is fans of manga, fans of Alice in Borderland, I would love to hear from you. Please comment down below. Would love to have more discussions about these books. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you can follow along with the rest of the Battle of the BookTuber vlogs and also get notified for any of my other videos. Until our next chapter together, merry part and blessed be.